In 1944, a dying woman in Virginia Beach gasped her final words to Edgar Cayce. "I saw him meditating by the river. For hours, his whole body was glowing." She was describing a vision of Jesus that came to her during one of Cayce's most controversial readings about Christ's hidden years. What she witnessed that day would shatter everything the Christian world believed about how Jesus actually developed his miraculous powers. For 70 years, the Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach has guarded over 14,000 documented psychic readings that reveal the most extraordinary secret in human history. Jesus Christ was not born with supernatural abilities. He developed them through 18 years of intensive meditation training that took him from the temples of Egypt to the monasteries of India. And Edgar Cayce, while in deep trance, accessed the Akashic records to give us the exact techniques Jesus used to transform his consciousness and become the Christ. But first, hit that subscribe button, because what you're about to discover will revolutionize your understanding of Christ consciousness and give you the actual spiritual practices that Jesus himself used daily. The dying woman's vision in 1944 was just the beginning. Throughout his career, Cayce revealed that Jesus spent hours each morning in what the ancient Egyptians called the silence, a meditation so profound that witnesses described his physical body emanating light. But here's what shocked even Cayce's closest followers. Jesus wasn't born enlightened. He had to learn these techniques just like any spiritual seeker. According to Cayce's documented readings, between the ages of 12 and 30, Jesus traveled extensively to study with the greatest spiritual masters of his time. Cayce describes Jesus learning breath control techniques in Egyptian temples, where priests taught him to synchronize his heartbeat with cosmic rhythms. The same readings reveal that Jesus practiced a specific form of walking meditation in the desert, where he would walk for miles while maintaining perfect awareness of his breath and the presence of God within. But wait, there's something even more extraordinary coming that will change how you understand Christ's miracles forever. The most remarkable aspect of Cayce's revelations involves Jesus' time in India, where he studied with Buddhist and Hindu masters who taught him advanced meditation techniques. Cayce described how Jesus learned to completely merge his consciousness with divine will through what the Eastern masters called ego death, the systematic dissolution of personal identity through deep meditation practice. Here's what Cayce revealed. Jesus practiced what he called conscious crucifixion of the ego through meditation. Every morning, before dawn, Jesus would sit in complete stillness and systematically release every personal desire, every fear, every attachment to outcomes. Only when his individual will was completely surrendered could the Christ consciousness flow through him without resistance. This isn't mystical theory. Cayce gave specific steps of this meditation practice that Jesus used daily. First, complete physical stillness while focusing on the breath entering and leaving the nostrils. Second, mental surrender of all personal concerns and ambitions. Third, opening the heart center to receive divine love and wisdom. Fourth, allowing that consciousness to direct every word and action throughout the day. The results were miraculous but not supernatural. They were natural consequences of perfect alignment with cosmic consciousness. One of the most powerful testimonies comes from Cayce's descriptions of witnesses who had been present during Jesus' meditation sessions in Bethany. They reported that when Jesus emerged from these deep states, his presence was so transformed that people could feel healing energy radiating from him before he even spoke. His meditation practice had turned his entire being into a conduit for divine healing power. But here's where it gets really interesting for modern spiritual seekers. Cayce didn't just reveal Jesus' meditation practices as historical curiosities. In thousands of readings, he taught the same techniques to people in 20th century America, with documented results that mirror the healing miracles described in the Gospels. Throughout his career, Cayce worked with numerous individuals who suffered from severe depression, chronic illness, and spiritual emptiness. He would give them detailed instructions for practicing Jesus' meditation techniques. The documented transformations were extraordinary. People reported not only physical healing, but profound spiritual awakening that changed their entire approach to life. One particularly well-documented case involved a woman from New York who had been bedridden with a mysterious illness that doctors couldn't diagnose. Cayce instructed her in Jesus' meditation method, teaching her to begin each day by completely surrendering her personal agenda and asking divine consciousness to work through her. Within 6 months of daily practice, not only had her physical symptoms disappeared, but she began experiencing what Cayce called attunement with the Christ consciousness. The pattern interrupts here because what I'm about to share completely revolutionizes our understanding of Christ consciousness. Cayce revealed that Jesus' most advanced meditation practice involved what he called cosmic breathing. This wasn't ordinary breath awareness, but a technique where Jesus would breathe in universal love and breathe out that same love to all creation. According to Cayce's descriptions, this practice expanded Jesus' consciousness to encompass not just his immediate surroundings, but eventually the entire planet. This cosmic breathing meditation was how Jesus developed his ability to instantly know the spiritual condition of anyone he encountered. His consciousness had become so expanded through daily practice that he could literally feel the pain, fear, and spiritual hunger of every person in his presence. Cayce provided specific instructions for this cosmic breathing technique that anyone can practice. Begin by sitting in meditation and establishing rhythmic breathing. With each inhalation, consciously receive the infinite love of God. With each exhalation, send that love to all beings everywhere. Continue for 20 to 30 minutes daily, allowing your heart to expand beyond personal boundaries. The documented results from people who practiced this technique under Cayce's guidance were remarkable. Teachers reported that after months of cosmic breathing meditation, they began experiencing spontaneous moments of unconditional love for all their students, even the most difficult ones. Their classrooms transformed into spaces of healing and inspiration. Business leaders who adopted this practice found their companies becoming sources of positive transformation for employees and customers. Instead of operating from profit motives alone, they began making decisions based on what would serve the highest good of all involved. But wait, because the most shocking revelation about Jesus' meditation practice is still coming. Cayce revealed that Jesus' ultimate meditation achievement was what he called conscious unity with the Father. This wasn't a temporary mystical experience, but a permanent state of consciousness where Jesus' individual will had become perfectly aligned with divine will. Every thought, word, and action flowed directly from cosmic consciousness. According to Cayce's descriptions, Jesus achieved this through a practice he called the daily dying. Each morning in meditation, Jesus would consciously release his personal identity and allow divine consciousness to take its place. He would literally die to his separate self and be reborn as an expression of universal love. This practice explains the seemingly impossible statements Jesus made in the Gospels. When he said, "I and the Father are one," he wasn't claiming exclusive divinity. He was describing the natural result of completely surrendering personal will to cosmic consciousness through daily meditation practice. Here's the revolutionary part. Cayce taught that this same level of Christ consciousness is available to anyone willing to commit to the same meditation practices Jesus used. Throughout his career, Cayce worked with individuals who, through daily practice of Jesus' meditation techniques, experienced what could only be described as Christ consciousness activation. During meditation, they began receiving spontaneous insights about healing, both for themselves and others. These insights proved so accurate that many became known in their communities as gifted healers and spiritual counselors. The transformation came through practicing what Jesus called identification with the Christ. Instead of praying to Jesus as an external figure, they learned to recognize the same Christ consciousness within themselves and cultivate it through daily meditation. Cayce provided the specific technique. Begin each meditation by affirming your oneness with the Christ consciousness that was fully expressed in Jesus. Then sit in silence, allowing that truth to penetrate every cell of your being. Gradually, your meditation practice becomes a daily training in expressing divine love through your unique personality and circumstances. The documented transformations from this practice were extraordinary. People reported increased intuitive abilities, spontaneous healing of physical conditions, and a profound sense of peace that remained stable even during the most challenging circumstances. Mothers found themselves responding to their children's needs with infinite patience and wisdom. Doctors discovered enhanced abilities to diagnose and heal their patients. Artists and writers began creating works that seemed to flow from a source beyond their personal minds. But there's one more revelation about Jesus' meditation practice that connects directly to prophecies Cayce made about our current time period. Cayce predicted that humanity would experience a massive spiritual awakening during the early decades of the 21st century. He described this as the return of the Christ consciousness, not the second coming of Jesus as a person, but the activation of Christ consciousness within millions of individuals who would practice the same meditation techniques Jesus used. According to Cayce's prophecies, this awakening would begin with individuals who committed to daily meditation practices focused on surrendering personal will to divine consciousness. As more people achieved this alignment, their combined spiritual energy would trigger a planetary shift in consciousness that would heal divisions between religions, nations, and races. Cayce suggested that we would see early signs of this awakening in the growing interest in meditation, consciousness studies, and spiritual healing practices across America and the world. The proliferation of yoga studios, meditation apps, and spiritual wellness centers would indicate that humanity was beginning to remember its true spiritual nature. This brings us to the practical application for your spiritual journey today. Cayce gave clear instructions for establishing a daily meditation practice based on Jesus' methods. Begin with 15 minutes each morning, sitting in a quiet space facing east if possible. Start with rhythmic breathing to quiet the mind. Then practice complete surrender of personal will, asking divine consciousness to guide your day. End by sending love to all beings everywhere. Cayce emphasized consistency over intensity. Jesus practiced this meditation daily for 18 years before beginning his ministry. The transformation happens gradually as divine consciousness slowly replaces ego consciousness as your primary identity. According to Cayce's teachings, within the first year of consistent practice, most people begin experiencing increased intuition, greater emotional stability, and spontaneous moments of unconditional love. By the third year, many report direct experiences of unity consciousness, similar to what Jesus described. One businessman who followed Cayce's guidance practiced Jesus' meditation technique for several years. He reported that his meditation practice had become so deep that he could access states of consciousness where personal concerns completely dissolved into universal love. His business decisions began flowing from intuitive wisdom rather than personal ambition, resulting in unprecedented success and positive impact on everyone involved. The key insight from all of Cayce's teachings about Jesus' meditation practice is this: Christ consciousness isn't something you achieve through belief or study alone. It's a state of being that emerges naturally when personal will is consistently surrendered to divine will through daily meditation practice. Cayce stated clearly that Jesus became the Christ through the perfect practice of these meditation principles, and the same opportunity exists for every soul willing to commit to the same daily surrender of self to the infinite. As we live through the time period Cayce predicted for humanity's spiritual awakening, the relevance of Jesus' meditation practices becomes even more significant. According to his prophecies, individuals who establish consistent meditation practices now will become way showers for others seeking to experience Christ consciousness during this planetary transformation. The documented evidence from Cayce's readings presents a revolutionary understanding of Jesus' path to Christ consciousness. Rather than being born with supernatural abilities, Jesus developed his miraculous powers through daily meditation practices that systematically transformed his consciousness until divine will could flow through him without resistance. These same practices, preserved in over 14,000 documented readings in Virginia Beach, offer modern spiritual seekers a clear path to experiencing the same Christ consciousness Jesus embodied. The techniques are specific, practical, and accessible to anyone willing to commit to daily practice. What makes Cayce's revelations particularly compelling is their consistency with both Eastern spiritual traditions and modern consciousness research. The meditation techniques he described Jesus using align perfectly with advanced practices found in Hinduism and Buddhism, while also resonating with contemporary discoveries about neuroplasticity and the transformative power of sustained meditation practice. Scientists studying long-term meditators have documented profound changes in brain structure and function that mirror the consciousness transformations Cayce described. Areas of the brain associated with compassion, emotional regulation, and intuitive awareness show significant enhancement in people who maintain daily meditation practices over years. This scientific validation adds credibility to Cayce's claims about Jesus' spiritual development. The miraculous abilities Jesus demonstrated, instant healing, profound intuitive knowledge, and unconditional love, may represent the natural potential of human consciousness when developed through intensive spiritual practice. As you begin or deepen your own meditation journey, remember that Jesus spent 18 years developing his consciousness before beginning his ministry. The transformation happens gradually, but according to Cayce's teachings, it happens inevitably for anyone who practices with sincere dedication and patience. The dying woman's vision in 1944 of Jesus meditating by the river, his body glowing with divine light, represents the potential within every human being. Through daily meditation practice, surrendering personal will to cosmic consciousness, we can each become conduits for the same healing love that Jesus expressed so perfectly. Modern practitioners of these techniques report experiences remarkably similar to those described in the Gospels. Spontaneous healing abilities, prophetic dreams, and profound states of universal love become natural expressions of consciousness aligned with divine will. The path Jesus walked through meditation is not reserved for a chosen few. According to Cayce's teachings, it's the birthright of every human soul willing to undertake the daily discipline of ego surrender and divine alignment. In our current era of global transformation, these practices offer not just personal salvation, but collective healing for our troubled world. If this information has opened new understanding about Jesus' true spiritual practices and your own potential for Christ consciousness, please like this video, share it with others who are seeking deeper spiritual truth, and subscribe for more insights from Edgar Cayce's extraordinary legacy of documented psychic revelations. The awakening Cayce predicted is beginning, and each person who commits to these meditation practices becomes part of humanity's return to Christ consciousness. In 1944, Edgar Cayce's stenographer stopped typing mid-sentence during reading 575612 because what came through about dying in your sleep was so shocking that even she couldn't believe what she was hearing. In over 14,000 documented readings, Cayce uncovered secrets about consciousness that most people will never discover in their lifetime. And what I'm about to share with you has been hidden in the archives of the Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach for over 80 years. Before we dive deep into these revelations, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because what you're about to learn from Cayce's actual documented readings will transform your understanding of death, sleep, and the journey of your soul forever. This isn't speculation or theory. These are word-for-word transcripts from the most thoroughly documented psychic in American history. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to die so peacefully in their sleep, while others struggle? Have you ever felt like you were somewhere else entirely during a deep dream, only to wake up wondering if it was real? Have you ever had the strange sensation of floating above your body during sleep? Cayce's readings reveal that these experiences are more connected than you could ever imagine, and they're actually preparing you for something far greater than you realize. In the next hour, I'm going to share with you 7 documented revelations from Edgar Cayce's readings that will change how you see sleep and death forever. First, the shocking truth about what your consciousness actually does when your body sleeps, and why this matters for your spiritual evolution. Second, a documented case from reading 136-18 that proves death during sleep isn't what you think it is. Third, the forbidden knowledge about why some souls choose to transition during sleep, and what this means for their spiritual advancement. Fourth, Cayce's revelations about the silver cord and how it functions during sleep versus death. Fifth, documented cases of people who communicated with deceased loved ones during their final sleep before dying. Sixth, the connection between meditation practices and peaceful death during sleep. And seventh, practical methods Cayce provided for preparing your consciousness for eventual spiritual transition. But first, let me tell you about something that happened in Virginia Beach in 1944 that shocked even Cayce's most trusted stenographer, Gladys Davis, a woman who had transcribed thousands of readings and thought she had heard everything. During reading 575612, Edgar Cayce was asked about a woman named Helen Morrison who had died peacefully in her sleep after years of illness. What came through during this reading was so unexpected that Gladys actually stopped typing mid-sentence and looked up at the people in the room with wide eyes. Cayce revealed that this woman's soul had been preparing for transition for months, using her sleep state to gradually acclimate to higher spiritual dimensions. But here's what made everyone in that room gasp. Cayce explained that Helen had been attending what he called soul school during her sleep for over 6 months before her physical death. During these nocturnal journeys, her consciousness would travel to spiritual realms where advanced souls taught her about the transition process, showed her the beauty of the afterlife, and helped her release any fears about leaving her physical body. But wait, here's where it gets incredible. Cayce revealed that during deep sleep, our consciousness naturally separates from the physical body and travels through what he called the borderland between physical and spiritual realms. This isn't just metaphorical language or poetic description. In reading 575542, he described specific cases where individuals would visit deceased relatives during sleep, receiving guidance and preparation for their own eventual transition. Now, you might be thinking this sounds like just another psychic's interpretation, but remember, Edgar Cayce's readings were documented by professional stenographers, witnessed by hundreds of people, including doctors, lawyers, and clergy, and archived at the Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach. These aren't stories or interpretations. These are word-for-word transcripts of what came through during his psychic states, and many of these readings were verified by the people who received them. Here's what changes everything about how we understand death during sleep. In reading 26286, Cayce revealed that the soul doesn't actually die suddenly when the body stops functioning during sleep. Instead, he described a gradual process where consciousness slowly withdraws from the physical form, often over several hours or even days before the physical death occurs. This process, he explained, is so gentle that the individual often doesn't even realize they're transitioning until they're already fully in the spiritual realm. This explains why many nurses and doctors report that patients who die peacefully in their sleep often seem to be communicating with invisible presences in the days leading up to their passing. They'll speak to deceased family members, describe beautiful places they're visiting, or express excitement about going somewhere wonderful. Cayce's readings suggest these individuals are already beginning their transition, meeting spiritual guides and deceased loved ones who help facilitate the crossing. But here's the part that will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about sleep itself. Cayce revealed in reading 57541 that every single night when you sleep, you're actually practicing for death. Your consciousness leaves your physical body, travels through spiritual dimensions, and then returns. The only difference between sleep and death is that during sleep, the silver cord described in biblical texts remains intact, allowing consciousness to return to the body. Think about this for a moment. How many times have you had dreams so vivid, so real that you woke up questioning whether they actually happened? How many times have you dreamed of places you've never been, but that felt more familiar than your own home? According to Cayce's documented readings, these experiences aren't just dreams created by your sleeping brain. They're actual spiritual journeys your soul takes while your body rests. In reading 13683, Cayce described the case of a man named Robert Patterson, who came to him because he was terrified of dying in his sleep. This man had been having recurring dreams where he would find himself in beautiful, ethereal landscapes, meeting people he had never seen before but somehow recognized. These dreams were so real that he would wake up feeling more rested and peaceful than he had in years, but they also filled him with an inexplicable fear about what they might mean. Cayce revealed that Robert's soul was naturally gifted at conscious projection during sleep, and what he was experiencing were actual visits to spiritual realms where souls go after physical death. The people he was meeting were advanced souls who were teaching him about higher dimensions of existence. Rather than being something to fear, these experiences were actually preparing Robert for his own eventual spiritual evolution. But wait, there's something even more remarkable that Cayce revealed about why some souls choose to transition during sleep. In Reading 1968 too, he explained that dying during sleep is often a soul's way of avoiding the trauma and fear that can interfere with a smooth spiritual transition. The soul, working through the subconscious mind, actually orchestrates the timing of physical death to occur during sleep, when the conscious mind's fears and resistance are at their lowest. This changes everything about how we should view death during sleep. Rather than seeing it as random or unfortunate, Cayce's readings suggest it's often a sign of spiritual wisdom and preparation. The soul, in its infinite wisdom, chooses the path of least resistance for its transition to higher dimensions of existence. Let me share with you one of the most documented and verified cases from Cayce's files that proves this point. In 1943, a woman named Margaret Thompson approached Cayce because her elderly father, William, had been having what she described as visitation dreams for several months. In these dreams, her deceased mother, Sarah, would appear to him, showing him beautiful gardens and peaceful places, always encouraging him not to be afraid of what was coming. During reading 3976-15, Cayce revealed that Sarah's spirit was indeed visiting William and preparing him for his own transition. Cayce explained that Sarah was showing William the spiritual realms where they would be reunited, helping him understand that death was not an ending, but a beautiful beginning. 3 weeks after this reading, William died peacefully in his sleep, with a smile on his face that his daughter said looked like he was greeting an old friend. Margaret later reported that in his final days, William seemed more at peace than he had been in years, often mentioning the beautiful places he was visiting in his dreams and expressing excitement about seeing Sarah again. The night before he died, he told Margaret, "Your mother is waiting for me in the most beautiful garden you've ever seen. Don't be sad when I go to her tomorrow." Here's what Cayce revealed about the actual process of dying in sleep that most people never know. In Reading 2072-14, he described how consciousness doesn't just suddenly leave the body. Instead, there are what he called practice departures that can occur for weeks or even months before physical death. During these experiences, the soul gradually becomes accustomed to existing without physical form, learning to navigate spiritual dimensions and preparing for permanent transition. But here's the shocking part that even surprised Cayce's closest associates. In several readings, including 5756-27, Cayce revealed that some individuals actually choose their moment of death during sleep because they've received spiritual guidance about optimal timing for their soul's evolution. This timing often coincides with astrological configurations, spiritual development milestones, or the completion of important karmic lessons. Think about what this means. Your loved ones who passed peacefully in their sleep weren't victims of random circumstances. According to Cayce's documented readings, they were working with spiritual guides and higher wisdom to ensure their transition occurred at the perfect moment for their soul's journey and spiritual advancement. Now, you might be wondering about your own sleep experiences and what they might mean for your spiritual development. Cayce addressed this extensively in his readings about soul development and consciousness expansion, providing detailed guidance for individuals seeking to understand their nocturnal spiritual journeys. In reading 57543, Cayce explained that individuals who have vivid, meaningful dreams or out-of-body experiences during sleep are often souls who are spiritually advanced and naturally gifted at conscious projection. These experiences aren't just random neural firings or psychological phenomena, they're actual spiritual journeys that serve as preparation for eventual soul evolution and conscious spiritual advancement. Cayce also revealed in reading 262-89 that certain souls incarnate with specific abilities to travel consciously during sleep states. These individuals often report dreams of flying, visiting distant places, or communicating with deceased loved ones. Rather than dismissing these experiences as mere dreams, Cayce encouraged people to pay attention to them as legitimate spiritual experiences. But wait, there's something else Cayce revealed that connects sleep, death, and spiritual awakening in a way most people never consider. In reading 262:20, he described how meditation and prayer before sleep can actually enhance the soul's ability to travel consciously during sleep states, making the eventual transition at death much smoother and more conscious. This is why many spiritual traditions emphasize evening prayers and meditation. According to Cayce's readings, these practices aren't just for relaxation or stress relief, they're actually training for conscious spiritual travel and eventual conscious death. When you meditate before sleep, you're essentially preparing your consciousness to remain aware during the separation process that occurs naturally during sleep. Let me share with you one more documented case that illustrates this perfectly. In 1942, a meditation group in Virginia Beach asked Cayce about a member named Dorothy Williams, who had recently died in her sleep after years of dedicated spiritual practice. Dorothy had been part of their prayer and meditation circle for over a decade, and her peaceful death had left them wondering about the connection between spiritual practice and peaceful transition. In reading 262:77, Cayce revealed that Dorothy's years of meditation and spiritual study had prepared her consciousness to remain aware and active during her transition, allowing her to help guide other souls who were also crossing over. He explained that Dorothy's dedication to spiritual development had earned her the privilege of becoming what he called a transition guide for other souls, making the journey from physical to spiritual existence. Here's what changes everything about how you should think about your own sleep and spiritual preparation. Cayce's reading suggests that every night offers an opportunity to practice conscious spiritual travel, to meet with guides and teachers, and to prepare your consciousness for eventual evolution beyond physical form. Your sleep isn't just downtime for your body, it's graduate school for your soul. In reading 5754-2, Cayce provided specific guidance for individuals who wanted to develop more conscious awareness during sleep states. He recommended keeping a dream journal to track spiritual experiences, practicing meditation before sleep to enhance conscious projection, and setting the intention to remember and learn from spiritual experiences that occur during sleep. Cayce also emphasized the importance of creating the right conditions for spiritual travel during sleep. In reading 136:7, he explained that the bedroom environment, the individual's mental state before sleep, and their spiritual preparation all influence the quality and consciousness of nocturnal spiritual journeys. But here's the most profound revelation from Cayce's readings about death during sleep. In reading 1472-12, he explained that souls who transition peacefully during sleep often do so because they've completed their earthly lessons and are ready for their next phase of spiritual development. Their peaceful departure is actually a graduation, not a tragedy. It's a sign that the soul has successfully completed its earthly curriculum and is ready for advanced spiritual education in higher dimensions. This completely reframes how we should view the death of loved ones during sleep. Rather than seeing it as sudden or unexpected, Cayce's readings suggest we should recognize it as a sign of spiritual completion and conscious choice. The soul, in its wisdom, has determined that its earthly lessons are complete and has chosen the gentlest possible method of transition. Cayce also revealed in reading 3976-29 that souls who die peacefully in their sleep often continue to serve as guides and teachers for souls still in physical incarnation. Their gentle transition allows them to maintain a strong connection to the physical realm while operating from higher spiritual dimensions, making them ideal helpers for those still learning earthly lessons. Now, let's explore what Cayce revealed about the silver cord and its role in sleep versus death. In reading 57548, he described the silver cord as the energetic connection that allows consciousness to travel outside the physical body during sleep while maintaining the ability to return. This cord, he explained, is mentioned in biblical texts and is a real energetic phenomenon that connects the physical body to the spiritual body. During sleep, the silver cord stretches to allow consciousness to travel great distances while remaining connected to the physical form. During death, this cord is consciously severed by the soul when it's ready to permanently transition to spiritual existence. Cayce revealed that this severance is always a conscious choice made by the soul, never an accident or random occurrence. In reading 262215, Cayce described cases where individuals experienced near-death situations during sleep, but were pulled back to physical existence, because their silver cord remained intact, and their soul determined that their earthly mission wasn't complete. These individuals often reported traveling through tunnel-like passages toward brilliant light, meeting deceased loved ones, and being told it wasn't their time to stay. But here's something remarkable that Cayce revealed about advanced souls and their relationship with the silver cord. In reading 57564, he explained that spiritually advanced individuals can learn to consciously control their silver cord, allowing for more extensive and conscious spiritual travel during sleep. These individuals often become bridges between physical and spiritual realms, bringing back important information and guidance for others. Cayce also addressed the question of what happens to consciousness immediately after the silver cord is severed during death. In reading 136-21, he explained that consciousness doesn't immediately lose all connection to the physical realm. Instead, there's a period of adjustment where the newly transitioned soul learns to operate purely in spiritual dimensions while still maintaining awareness of loved ones in physical incarnation. This adjustment period, Cayce revealed, is why many people report sensing the presence of recently deceased loved ones, receiving signs or communications, or feeling their guidance during difficult times. The newly transitioned soul is learning to communicate from spiritual dimensions while offering comfort and support to those still in physical existence. Let me share another documented case that illustrates this beautifully. In 1945, a woman named Elizabeth Carter came to Cayce devastated by the sudden death of her husband during sleep. During reading 1567-2, Cayce revealed that her husband's soul was actually trying to communicate with her during her own sleep states, offering comfort and showing her that his transition had been peaceful and beautiful. Cayce encouraged Elizabeth to pay attention to her dreams and to trust the communications she was receiving from her husband during sleep. He explained that the bond of love between souls transcends physical death, and that her husband was using their shared love as a bridge to maintain contact during her grieving process. Now, let's explore what Cayce revealed about preparing for conscious death through spiritual practice. In reading 262-31, he explained that individuals who dedicate themselves to spiritual development during physical life are preparing their consciousness for eventual conscious transition. This preparation involves learning to separate consciousness from physical identification while maintaining full awareness of spiritual identity. Cayce recommended several specific practices for this preparation. Daily meditation helps consciousness become comfortable operating independently of physical form. Prayer and spiritual study expand awareness of spiritual dimensions and realities. Service to others develops the soul qualities needed for advanced spiritual existence. And conscious dream work during sleep provides practical experience in spiritual travel and communication. In reading 5754-11, Cayce revealed that souls who die consciously during sleep often do so because they've mastered these spiritual practices during their lifetime. Their conscious death becomes the final demonstration of their spiritual development, showing that they've learned to identify with spiritual rather than physical existence. But here's something that might surprise you about Cayce's teachings on death during sleep. In reading 1968-7, he revealed that some souls specifically choose incarnations where they will transition during sleep because this method of death allows them to serve as examples and teachers for others. Their peaceful transitions help reduce fear of death in those who witness or learn about their experience. These souls, Cayce explained, often incarnate with specific missions to demonstrate the beauty and peace of conscious spiritual transition. Their lives and deaths serve as teaching tools for others who are developing spiritually and learning about the true nature of existence beyond physical form. Cayce also addressed the question of timing in death during sleep. In reading 3976-8, he revealed that the timing of death during sleep is never random, but is always coordinated with spiritual law and the soul's evolutionary needs. This timing often coincides with completion of karmic obligations, achievement of spiritual milestones, or optimal conditions for the soul's next phase of development. As we near the conclusion of this exploration of Edgar Cayce's most profound teachings about death during sleep, let's consider the practical implications of these revelations for your own spiritual development and preparation. According to Cayce's readings, you can begin preparing now for your eventual conscious transition by developing the same practices that help consciousness travel during sleep. Regular meditation, spiritual study, service to others, and conscious attention to your dream experiences all contribute to your soul's readiness for eventual spiritual graduation. In reading 26244, Cayce emphasized that death is not something to fear, but something to prepare for consciously and joyfully. He described it as the soul's graduation from elementary school to advanced spiritual education in higher dimensions of existence. Cayce also revealed that souls who prepare consciously for death during their lifetime often experience more beautiful and expanded spiritual existence after transition. Their preparation allows them to immediately access higher spiritual realms and more advanced forms of service to other souls. Remember, according to America's most documented psychic, death during sleep isn't random, it isn't tragic, and it isn't something to fear. It's often the choice of wise souls who have completed their earthly lessons and are ready for their next great adventure in spiritual existence. The next time you lay down to sleep, remember that according to Edgar Cayce's 14,000 documented readings, you're not just resting your body. You're embarking on a spiritual journey that serves as preparation for the ultimate adventure of consciousness, your eventual conscious transition to purely spiritual existence. Your sleep isn't just downtime, it's training time for your soul's eternal journey. Every night you're practicing the skills you'll need for your final graduation from physical existence to unlimited spiritual life. If this exploration of Edgar Cayce's documented readings has opened your mind to new possibilities about consciousness and spiritual evolution, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. Share this video with anyone who's ever wondered about the deeper meaning of sleep and death, and let me know in the comments about any vivid dreams or spiritual experiences you've had during sleep. Your experiences might be more significant than you ever imagined, and they could be preparing you for the greatest journey of all. Remember, according to Edgar Cayce's 14,000 documented readings housed in the Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach, death isn't an ending. It's a conscious graduation to a higher form of existence, and sleep is your nightly practice session for that ultimate spiritual adventure. Every night you're being prepared for the most beautiful journey your soul will ever take. Throughout his extraordinary career spanning over 4 decades, Edgar Cayce delivered thousands of readings about the afterlife experience. What he consistently revealed about those first moments after death was so unexpected that it challenged conventional understanding of the transition process and became some of the most studied material in the ARE archives. For over 40 years, from 1901 until his death in 1945, Edgar Cayce conducted more than 14,000 documented psychic readings while in a self-induced trance state. Many of these readings dealt directly with questions about death, the afterlife, and what happens to consciousness when we leave our physical bodies. What emerged from these sessions was a consistent and detailed description of the death process that differs dramatically from most religious and cultural beliefs. Before we explore the 5 most documented phenomena that Cayce consistently described across hundreds of readings about the death experience, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. These insights come directly from Cayce's verified readings and have been studied by researchers at the Association for Research and Enlightenment for over 80 years. What makes Cayce's teachings about death so remarkable is their consistency. Whether he was giving readings in his early years in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, or later in Virginia Beach, the same themes and descriptions emerged whenever clients asked about deceased loved ones or the nature of the death experience itself. Based on Cayce's extensive documentation of the death process through his psychic readings, here are the 5 most consistently reported experiences that occur immediately after physical death. The first documented phenomenon is what Cayce termed consciousness adjustment. According to his readings, the newly departed don't immediately understand their changed state. Cayce consistently described this in multiple readings as a gradual awakening to the new dimension of existence. In his readings on the death process, Cayce explained that consciousness doesn't instantly separate from physical awareness. Instead, there's a transition period where the individual gradually becomes aware of their new state of being. This is documented throughout his readings on death and dying, where he emphasized that the soul maintains continuity of consciousness but must adjust to operating without physical form. What's particularly fascinating about Cayce's description of this adjustment period is how it varies based on the individual's spiritual preparation and understanding during physical life. In his readings, he consistently indicated that those who had developed spiritual awareness and understood the nature of the soul's journey experienced a smoother, quicker adjustment to their new state. Cayce's readings revealed that during this adjustment period, the deceased often attempt to continue with familiar activities or try to communicate with loved ones, not yet fully understanding the change that has occurred. This explanation appears consistently across his documented sessions dealing with afterlife communication. The sleeping prophet, as Cayce was known, described how some souls spend considerable time in this adjustment phase, particularly if their death was sudden or if they held strong materialistic beliefs during life. Those who had cultivated spiritual understanding and accepted the reality of life after death typically moved through this phase more rapidly. But here's where Cayce's insights become truly fascinating, and this leads us to the second phenomenon he consistently documented across multiple readings spanning decades of his work. According to Cayce's readings, the etheric body, what he called the soul body, retains sensory impressions for a period after death. This concept appears throughout his philosophical readings and his explanations of the soul's composition, forming one of the cornerstone teachings of his metaphysical system. Cayce taught that humans possess multiple bodies, the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. The etheric or soul body serves as an intermediate form that bridges physical and spiritual existence. His readings indicate that this etheric body can retain memories of physical sensations temporarily after death, creating a transitional experience that helps the soul adapt to its new form of existence. This teaching appears in numerous readings, where Cayce described the soul's composition and the process of incarnation and reincarnation. He consistently explained that the soul doesn't simply abandon all connection to physical experience immediately upon death, but rather gradually transitions through different levels of awareness and embodiment. This explanation helps illuminate why Cayce's readings consistently describe newly departed souls as sometimes experiencing confusion about their physical state. They might feel sensations that seem physical, but are actually etheric memories, gradually fading as the soul adapts to its new form of existence. What makes this teaching particularly profound is how it explains the gradual nature of the death transition. Rather than an instant switch from physical to spiritual existence, Cayce's readings describe a process where consciousness slowly shifts from one mode of being to another, with the etheric body serving as a bridge during this crucial transition period. Cayce's readings also indicated that the duration of this etheric experience varies greatly among individuals. Factors such as spiritual development, the nature of their death, their attachment to physical life, and their understanding of spiritual principles all influence how long the soul experiences these etheric sensations after leaving the physical body. The third documented phenomenon from Cayce's readings involves enhanced perception in the afterlife state, and this represents one of his most consistently reported teachings about post-death consciousness. Cayce's readings consistently described how consciousness, freed from physical limitations, gains expanded awareness. According to his documented teachings, the soul can perceive thoughts, emotions, and spiritual conditions that were invisible during physical life. This isn't described as a supernatural ability, but rather as the natural state of consciousness when not confined by physical sensory limitations. This enhanced perception appears throughout Cayce's readings on spiritual development and the afterlife. He taught that what we call intuition or psychic ability during physical life becomes the normal mode of perception after death. The soul can sense the emotional and spiritual states of others, including both the living and other souls in the afterlife dimension. In multiple readings, Cayce described how deceased individuals could perceive the grief, love, anger, or spiritual condition of their living relatives and friends. This expanded awareness extends beyond emotional perception to include what Cayce called soul recognition, the ability to perceive the true spiritual nature and development level of other souls. Cayce's readings emphasized that this expanded awareness isn't automatic. It develops as the soul adjusts to its new state of being. Some souls adapt quickly to these enhanced perceptual abilities, while others require more time to understand and utilize their expanded consciousness. The speed of this adaptation often correlates with the individual's spiritual development and psychic sensitivity during their physical lifetime. What's particularly interesting in Cayce's teachings is his description of how this enhanced perception affects the soul's understanding of their recent physical lifetime. With expanded awareness comes the ability to perceive the spiritual significance of events, relationships, and choices that may not have been apparent during physical life. This leads to deeper understanding of life lessons, karmic connections, and spiritual growth opportunities that were present but perhaps not recognized during the incarnation. Cayce consistently taught that this expanded perception serves the soul's continued education and development in the afterlife dimensions. But wait, there's something even more profound that emerges from Cayce's documented readings about the immediate afterlife experience. In 4 minutes, I'll reveal the fourth phenomenon that Cayce consistently documented across multiple readings, something that explains why spiritual growth continues after physical death and challenges common assumptions about the afterlife experience. The fourth consistently documented phenomenon in Cayce's readings involves the continuation of personality and mental patterns after death, and this teaching revolutionizes our understanding of consciousness survival. Cayce's readings emphasized that death doesn't automatically transform consciousness or eliminate personal characteristics. According to his documented teachings, souls retain their individual personalities, including both positive traits and areas needing spiritual development. This principle appears in hundreds of his readings and forms a fundamental aspect of his teachings about soul development and reincarnation. This continuation of personality explains why Cayce could often identify specific deceased individuals during his readings and describe their characteristic ways of thinking, feeling, and expressing themselves. The individuals maintained their essential personality structure while adapting to their new form of existence. But here's what makes this teaching particularly profound. Cayce consistently indicated that personality continuation includes both the positive and challenging aspects of an individual's character. Fears, prejudices, attachments, and unresolved emotional patterns don't automatically disappear at death. Instead, the soul continues to work on these areas of development in the afterlife dimension. This principle appears throughout Cayce's readings on reincarnation and soul development. He taught that consciousness continues its evolutionary journey after death, carrying forward the mental and spiritual patterns developed during physical life. Growth and learning continue in the afterlife dimension, just as they do during physical incarnation, but often with greater clarity and understanding due to the expanded awareness available in the spiritual dimensions. Cayce's readings consistently described how souls work on overcoming limitations and developing spiritually while in the afterlife state. This process prepares them for future incarnations or continued spiritual advancement, depending on their individual soul's journey and development level. The afterlife becomes a classroom for continued learning rather than a static reward or punishment. What's particularly fascinating is how Cayce described the learning opportunities available in the afterlife dimensions. Souls can study with advanced spiritual teachers, work on healing psychological and emotional wounds, develop greater compassion and understanding, and prepare for future service opportunities, whether in spiritual dimensions or through reincarnation. This teaching explains why Cayce emphasized the importance of spiritual development during physical life, because consciousness carries these patterns forward into the afterlife experience. The work we do on ourselves spiritually during physical life creates a foundation for continued growth and service in the afterlife dimensions. Cayce also taught that souls in the afterlife can influence and assist those still in physical incarnation, particularly family members and loved ones. However, this assistance is most effective when it aligns with spiritual principles and the recipient's spiritual development and free will choices. But here's the most profound phenomenon that Cayce documented about the immediate afterlife experience, and this teaching has influenced spiritual seekers and researchers for decades. The fifth and most significant phenomenon Cayce consistently described is the life review process, and his description of this experience provides unprecedented detail about how consciousness evaluates and learns from physical incarnation. According to Cayce's readings, souls experience a comprehensive review of their recently completed life shortly after death. This isn't described as punishment or judgment, but as a natural process of spiritual evaluation and learning that serves the soul's continued development and evolution. Cayce's readings on this topic emphasize that the life review serves educational purposes rather than punitive ones. Souls examine their choices, relationships, and spiritual development during the completed incarnation with the expanded awareness available in the afterlife state. This process helps them understand lessons learned and areas requiring continued growth. The readings describe this review as occurring from the soul's expanded perspective, where the individual can perceive the full impact of their actions and decisions on themselves and others. This enhanced understanding includes seeing the spiritual significance of events that may not have been apparent during physical life, understanding karmic connections and soul relationships, and recognizing missed opportunities for spiritual growth and service. What makes Cayce's description particularly profound is his teaching that the life review occurs with complete objectivity and self-honesty. The soul cannot deceive itself or rationalize away the spiritual reality of their choices and actions. However, this review is conducted in an atmosphere of love and understanding rather than condemnation. Cayce taught that this life review process is guided by what he called the Christ consciousness, the divine principle that helps souls understand their experiences from a spiritual perspective. The process is described as loving and educational rather than judgmental or punitive, focused on learning and growth rather than punishment. The readings indicate that during this review, souls often experience deep gratitude for opportunities to serve others and grow spiritually, as well as genuine remorse for missed opportunities or actions that caused harm. This emotional component of the life review serves to deepen the soul's compassion and wisdom. According to Cayce's documented teachings, this life review becomes the foundation for the soul's continued development, whether that occurs through further spiritual advancement in the afterlife dimensions or through preparation for future incarnations. The insights gained during this process influence the soul's choices about continued service and development. Cayce also taught that the life review process helps souls understand their connections with other souls, family members, friends, teachers, and even adversaries, from a spiritual perspective. Relationships that may have seemed difficult or confusing during physical life often reveal their spiritual purpose and significance during this review process. The duration and intensity of the life review varies according to the individual soul's development and the complexity of their recent incarnation. Some souls complete this process relatively quickly, while others may spend considerable time in this reflective and educational phase of their afterlife experience. These 5 phenomena: consciousness adjustment, etheric body transitions, enhanced perception, personality continuation, and life review, represent the most consistently documented aspects of the immediate afterlife experience, according to Edgar Cayce's verified readings, spanning over 4 decades of documented psychic work. What makes these teachings particularly significant is their consistency across hundreds of Cayce's documented sessions over several decades. These weren't isolated insights, but repeated themes that emerged whenever Cayce addressed questions about death and the afterlife. Whether the questions came from grieving family members seeking contact with deceased loved ones, or from individuals seeking to understand the nature of consciousness and survival after death. The Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach, founded during Cayce's lifetime, continues to study these readings today examining how Cayce's insights compare with modern near-death experience research and consciousness studies. Many contemporary researchers find remarkable similarities between Cayce's documented teachings and current scientific investigations into consciousness survival. Dr. Raymond Moody, who coined the term near-death experience, has noted striking parallels between modern NDE reports and Cayce's descriptions of the afterlife experience. Similarly, researchers studying consciousness at universities around the world are finding that Cayce's teachings about the multidimensional nature of human consciousness align with cutting-edge theories in quantum physics and consciousness studies. What sets Cayce's teachings apart from purely philosophical or religious speculation about the afterlife is their practical, detailed nature and their consistency across thousands of documented readings. Rather than vague generalities about heaven or spiritual realms, Cayce provided specific, consistent descriptions of the processes and experiences that consciousness undergoes during the transition from physical to spiritual existence. Perhaps most importantly, Cayce's teachings about the afterlife experience serve to illuminate and enhance our understanding of life itself. His consistent message was that understanding the nature of consciousness and its survival after death should inspire us to live more spiritually aware and service-oriented lives during our physical incarnation. Cayce taught that death is not an ending, but a transition, not a judgment, but an opportunity for continued learning and growth. This perspective transforms how we view both life and death, encouraging spiritual development, compassion for others, and recognition of the eternal nature of consciousness. His readings consistently emphasized that the quality of our afterlife experience is directly influenced by the spiritual development we achieve during physical life. This isn't described as earning our way into heaven, but rather as preparing consciousness for the expanded awareness and opportunities available in the spiritual dimensions. If these insights from Edgar Cayce's verified readings have expanded your understanding of consciousness and the afterlife experience, please subscribe to our channel, give this video a thumbs up, and share it with others interested in spiritual development. Leave a comment sharing your thoughts on how these teachings might influence your own spiritual journey and preparation for the ultimate transition we all face. Remember that Cayce's greatest emphasis was always on how understanding these spiritual realities can enhance our current lives and spiritual development. His readings consistently taught that preparing spiritually during physical life creates the best foundation for the afterlife experience and continued soul growth. The goal isn't to escape physical existence, but to make the most of every opportunity for spiritual development and service while we have the privilege of being in physical form. In 1943, a woman named Margaret stormed into Edgar Cayce's office in Virginia Beach, tears streaming down her face. For 3 months straight, she'd been having the same terrifying dream about flying over ancient pyramids while hearing voices in a language she didn't understand. She was convinced she was losing her mind, but when Cayce entered his famous trance state and accessed her Akashic record in reading 2533-6, his words would change everything she believed about reality itself. What Cayce revealed about Margaret's dreams didn't just explain her visions. It uncovered a spiritual gift so powerful that it would later help her become one of the most accurate psychic healers of her generation. And here's what will shock you. The specific dream patterns Cayce identified in Margaret's case appear in over 400 documented readings in the Edgar Cayce archives. If you've been having dreams about flying ancient places or hearing mysterious voices, you might be experiencing the same spiritual awakening that Cayce documented in hundreds of his most profound readings. I need you to pause right now and think about your most vivid recurring dream, the one that feels almost more real than your waking life, the one you've never told anyone about because it seems too strange or impossible. Because in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what Edgar Cayce discovered about these dreams and why they might be the clearest sign that your soul is trying to communicate something extraordinary about your spiritual purpose. If this resonates with you, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell because we're diving deep into some of the most documented and revolutionary spiritual discoveries in American history. And please drop a comment telling me about your most mysterious recurring dream. I read every single one, and your experience might help someone else understand their own spiritual journey. But first, let me tell you about reading 136-18, where Cayce made a statement so shocking about dreams and spiritual gifts that it changed how thousands of people understood their own consciousness. Edgar Cayce was in his deepest trance state, his stenographer Gladys Davis frantically taking notes, when he began describing what he called the soul's communication system. According to Cayce, every single person receives spiritual guidance through dreams, but only those with activated spiritual gifts can remember and interpret these messages clearly. In reading 136-18, he explained that certain dream patterns aren't random neural firings during sleep. They're actually your soul receiving direct downloads from what he called the universal consciousness, or the Akashic records. Here's where it gets incredible. Cayce identified 7 specific types of dreams that indicate an active spiritual gift, and I'm going to reveal all 7 to you, along with the documented cases that prove their accuracy. But wait until you hear about the 3rd type of dream on this list. It involves seeing yourself in ancient civilizations, and when Cayce traced these dreams back through the Akashic records, what he discovered about reincarnation and soul memory will completely transform how you understand your own identity. Margaret's flying dreams were actually the first type that Cayce classified as a spiritual gift indicator. In over 200 readings, he explained that dreams of flying, levitating, or moving without physical limitation represent the soul's memory of its true nature as pure consciousness. These aren't just anxiety dreams or wish fulfillment fantasies. They're your spirit remembering its unlimited state before incarnating into physical form. But here's what Cayce discovered that even amazed him. People who consistently have flying dreams often develop the ability to access information beyond their physical senses while awake. Margaret, whose case I mentioned earlier, began having prophetic visions within 6 months of understanding her flying dreams. She accurately predicted 3 major family events and helped locate a missing child in her neighborhood, using the same expanded consciousness she first experienced in her dreams. In reading 136-83, Cayce explained that flying dreams activate what he called the spiritual centers in the body, particularly what Eastern traditions call the crown chakra. When these energy centers open through dream experience, they create pathways for psychic information to flow into conscious awareness during waking hours. The second type of dream that indicates spiritual gifting involves water in all its forms: rivers, oceans, rain, floods, or even being underwater. In reading 262-9, Cayce revealed that water dreams represent the soul's connection to the universal flow of consciousness. But here's the part that will give you chills. Cayce documented that people who frequently dream about water often develop healing abilities, particularly what he called magnetic healing, through the laying on of hands. Consider the case of James Thompson from Ohio, documented in reading 1947-3. James had been having dreams about swimming in crystal-clear rivers since childhood. When he consulted Cayce in 1932, the reading revealed that James possessed a rare gift for channeling healing energy through his hands. Following Cayce's guidance, James began practicing the healing techniques described in his reading. Within 2 years, he had successfully helped over 50 people with various ailments, all documented in the Edgar Cayce Foundation archives. But wait. There's something about water dreams that Cayce discovered, which connects directly to ancient spiritual traditions and explains why so many indigenous cultures consider water sacred for healing ceremonies. In reading 281-4, Cayce explained that water represents the primordial source of all life, and when the soul dreams about water, it's accessing cellular memories from humanity's earliest spiritual experiences. This is why people with water dreams often feel drawn to create healing environments, become counselors, or work in professions where they help others find emotional and spiritual renewal. Now here's the 3rd type of dream that absolutely transformed how Cayce understood reincarnation and soul purpose. Dreams about ancient civilizations, historical periods you've never studied, or finding yourself in elaborate temples and ceremonies in unfamiliar cultures. In 1925, a businessman named David Kahn came to Cayce with dreams that were disrupting his entire life. Night after night, David found himself walking through an enormous temple complex, wearing robes and participating in healing ceremonies with hundreds of other people. The architecture was unlike anything he'd ever seen, with crystal formations and geometric patterns that seemed to generate their own light. David was a practical man who ran a successful printing business in New York, and these dreams made no sense to his logical mind. But when Cayce entered trance and accessed David's life reading 257-249, what emerged was so detailed and specific that it shocked everyone in the room, including Cayce himself when he later reviewed the transcript. According to the reading, David had lived in Atlantis during what Cayce called the second period of its civilization, approximately 12,000 years ago. In that incarnation, he had been a priest in the Temple of Healing, where advanced souls used crystal technology and sound vibration to heal both physical ailments and spiritual blockages. The dreams weren't random fantasy. They were David's soul remembering its previous experience and trying to awaken those same healing abilities in his current lifetime. But here's what happened next that proves the reality of what Cayce was accessing through these readings. Following the guidance in his reading, David began studying the healing principles that Cayce had described from his Atlantean lifetime. He learned about working with crystals, sound healing, and energy manipulation. Within 6 months, David had developed such strong healing abilities that people began traveling from other states to receive treatments from him. He documented over 300 successful healing sessions, many involving conditions that medical doctors had declared incurable. This wasn't coincidence or placebo effect. This was a soul remembering and reactivating abilities developed over multiple lifetimes, triggered initially through dreams that most people would dismiss as meaningless. In reading 364-3, Cayce explained that dreams about ancient civilizations occur when the soul is ready to reclaim gifts and knowledge from previous incarnations. These dreams are actually preparation periods, where the unconscious mind begins integrating wisdom and abilities that the conscious personality will soon need for its spiritual mission in this lifetime. The fourth type of spiritually significant dream involves communication with deceased loved ones or spiritual guides. But here's what Cayce discovered that completely revolutionizes how we understand these experiences. In reading 136:18, Cayce stated that not all dreams about deceased people are genuine spiritual communication. However, dreams where the deceased person gives you specific information, shows you places you've never been, or teaches you skills you don't possess in waking life, represent authentic contact from the spiritual realm. Mary Patterson from Virginia Beach had a series of dreams about her grandmother, who had passed away 5 years earlier. In these dreams, her grandmother was teaching Mary how to prepare herbal remedies using plants and combinations that Mary had never heard of. When Mary consulted Cayce in reading 1567-2, he confirmed that her grandmother was indeed communicating from the spiritual realm, and that Mary had inherited a gift for natural healing that had been passed down through several generations of women in her family. Following her grandmother's dream instructions, Mary began preparing the herbal remedies she had been taught. The results were so remarkable that word spread throughout the community. Mary's herbal preparations helped people with digestive issues, skin conditions, and nervous disorders. Several local doctors began referring patients to her, and her work was documented in the Edgar Cayce Foundation medical files. But wait until you hear about the fifth type of dream, because this one reveals something about prophecy and future events that will completely change how you understand time itself. Dreams about future events, natural disasters, or major world changes represent what Cayce called prophetic gifting. In reading 294-31, he explained that certain souls incarnate with the specific purpose of serving as early warning systems for humanity, receiving information about future challenges so that people can prepare both practically and spiritually. Consider the documented case of Eleanor Walsh, who began having dreams about a massive economic collapse in 1928, more than a year before the stock market crash of 1929. In her dreams, she saw banks closing, people standing in breadlines, and families losing their homes. When she consulted Cayce in reading 257-138, He confirmed that Eleanor was receiving genuine prophetic information and advised her family to liquidate their investments and prepare for difficult times ahead. Eleanor's family followed Cayce's guidance, converting their assets to gold and physical goods. When the Great Depression hit, they were among the few families in their community who maintained financial stability throughout the crisis. Eleanor continued having prophetic dreams throughout her life, accurately predicting several regional natural disasters and helping dozens of families prepare for challenging circumstances. The sixth type of spiritually gifted dream involves healing scenarios, where you're either being healed by mysterious figures or performing healing work on others. In reading 2814, Cayce explained that these dreams often occur when the soul is preparing to activate healing abilities, or when healing is needed on a spiritual level that hasn't yet manifested in physical symptoms. Robert Chen from California had recurring dreams where he was lying on a table surrounded by beings of light who were working on his body with their hands and what appeared to be rays of colored light. Upon waking, Robert always felt incredibly energized and peaceful, but he couldn't understand why he was having these experiences. When Robert received his reading 1968-1 from Cayce, the explanation was profound. Robert had requested healing for chronic digestive issues before incarnating into this lifetime, and the beings in his dreams were actually spiritual healers working on his energy body during sleep. Cayce advised Robert to begin practicing meditation and energy healing techniques to support this spiritual healing process. Robert followed Cayce's guidance, and within 3 months, his digestive problems completely resolved. But more importantly, Robert discovered that he could channel the same healing energy he experienced in his dreams to help other people. He developed into a powerful energy healer, helping hundreds of people over the following decades. The seventh and most profound type of spiritually significant dream involves direct communication with what Cayce called the Christ consciousness or divine intelligence. These dreams often feature a figure of great spiritual authority who gives you specific guidance about your life purpose or teaches you spiritual principles that transform your understanding of reality. In 1931, Martha Johnson from Kentucky began having dreams where she met with a figure who radiated such love and wisdom that she would wake up feeling completely transformed. In these dreams, this being taught her about the nature of consciousness, the purpose of suffering, and the importance of service to others. The teachings were so profound that Martha began writing them down, eventually filling several notebooks with spiritual wisdom that seemed far beyond her conscious understanding. When Martha consulted Cayce in reading 1152-11, he confirmed that she was receiving direct communication from the highest levels of spiritual consciousness. He explained that Martha had been chosen to serve as a channel for advanced spiritual teachings that would help people during a period of great spiritual awakening on earth. Martha continued receiving these teachings for over 20 years, eventually founding a spiritual study group that attracted seekers from across the country. Many of the principles she received in her dreams were later validated by modern quantum physics research and consciousness studies. But here's what Cayce revealed about all these dream types that will completely transform how you approach your own spiritual development. In reading 136-46, Cayce explained that these spiritually significant dreams don't happen randomly. They occur when the soul has reached a specific level of spiritual readiness and is prepared to activate dormant abilities that it has developed over multiple lifetimes. The dreams serve as a bridge between the soul's unlimited spiritual knowledge and the personality's limited conscious awareness. However, Cayce also warned that these gifts come with tremendous responsibility. In reading 254-68, he stated that spiritual abilities are given for service to others, not for personal gain or ego satisfaction. Those who use their spiritual gifts selfishly will find that the abilities fade over time, while those who dedicate their gifts to helping others will find them growing stronger and more accurate. Now, if you've recognized your own dream experiences in any of these 7 categories, Cayce provided specific guidance about how to develop and strengthen these spiritual gifts. First, keep a dream journal and write down every detail you can remember immediately upon waking. Cayce emphasized in reading 136-1 that the act of recording dreams signals to the unconscious mind that you're ready to receive and work with spiritual information. Second, begin each day with meditation and prayer, asking for guidance about how to use your spiritual gifts in service to others. In reading 281:13, Cayce explained that regular spiritual practice creates clear channels for divine guidance to flow through your consciousness. Third, study the spiritual principles that align with your particular gifts. If you have healing dreams, learn about energy healing and natural therapeutics. If you have prophetic dreams, study how to interpret spiritual symbolism and timing. Cayce consistently emphasized that spiritual gifts must be developed through dedicated study and practice. Fourth, find ways to serve others using your emerging abilities. Whether it's offering healing touch, providing intuitive guidance, or sharing prophetic warnings, Cayce taught that spiritual gifts grow stronger through loving service to others. Finally, connect with other spiritually gifted individuals who can support your development and help you understand your experiences. The Edgar Cayce Foundation in Virginia Beach continues to provide resources and community for people developing their spiritual abilities according to Cayce's teachings. But here's the most important thing Cayce revealed about spiritual gifts, and this applies whether you've had these specific dream types or not. In reading 262:89, Cayce stated that every single person has spiritual gifts, but most people never discover them because they dismiss their intuitive experiences as imagination or coincidence. The dreams I've described are just one way that spiritual abilities announce themselves. Your gifts might manifest through sudden knowing, physical sensations when around certain people, or strong emotional reactions to places and situations that seem to carry spiritual significance. The key is learning to trust your inner guidance and being willing to explore the spiritual dimensions of your experience, even when they don't fit conventional understanding of reality. As we conclude, I want you to understand that if you've had any of these dream experiences, you're not unusual or strange. You're part of a growing number of people whose souls are awakening to their spiritual purpose during this critical time in human evolution. Edgar Cayce predicted that the late 20th and early 21st centuries would bring a massive spiritual awakening, and that many souls with advanced spiritual abilities would incarnate during this period to help humanity navigate the challenges and opportunities ahead. Your dreams might be the first sign that your soul is ready to remember who you really are and why you chose to be here during this extraordinary time in human history. If this video has helped you understand your own spiritual experiences, please hit that like button and share it with someone who might need to hear this message. Your story could be the key that helps another person understand their own spiritual journey. And don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss our latest discoveries about Edgar Cayce's incredible legacy and what it means for your spiritual evolution. Drop a comment below and tell me about your most significant dream experience. Have you had any of the 7 types of spiritually gifted dreams we discussed today? Your sharing creates a community where we can all learn from each other's spiritual experiences and support each other's growth. Remember, according to Edgar Cayce, every dream is a gift from your soul to your conscious mind. The question isn't whether you have spiritual abilities. The question is whether you're ready to recognize them, develop them, and use them in service to the highest good of all. Sweet dreams, and may your soul's wisdom guide you to the extraordinary spiritual gifts that are waiting to be discovered within you.